So good day everyone, I'm Shailani Aminola. So in this video, I will be discussing the archetypes of literature by Northrop Frye. So the key objectives of my discussion will be the following. I'll be discussing who is Northrop Frye, what is archetype, the archetype of literature, and the what is purpose of Frye's theory. So, Northrop Frye was born on July 14, 1912 and was died on January 23, 1991 at the age of 78. So, his sub-discipline was literary criticism and literary theory. He was one of the most recognized authors of literary criticism worldwide. So, Northrop Frye studied at both the University of Toronto and Oxford. He was also an influential Canadian author, literary critic, and literary theorist who drew from his knowledge of philosophy. So basically, Northrop Frye rose to international prominence with the publication of Anatomy of Criticism in 1957, and it firmly established him as one of the most brilliant, original, and influential of modern critics. So on the whole, he wrote about 20 books on Western literature, culture, myth, archetypal theory, religion, and social thought. So basically, The Fables of Identity, wherein it is the studies in poetic mythology, is a critical work, or his critical work, that was published in 1963. So basically, the present essay, which is The Archetypes of Literature, is taken from the book. So in the essay, Frye critically analyzes that literature against the backdrop of rituals and myths. So he interprets literature in the light of various rituals and myths. So Frye has divided the essay into three parts. The first part deals with the concept of archetypal criticism. The second part throws light of the inductive method of analysis of a text. The third part focuses on the deductive method of analysis. So all of the methods fall under structural criticism. So I will be discussing that three parts later. So what is archetypes? So according to a glossary of literary terms by M.H. Abrams, in literary criticism, the term archetype denotes recurrent narrative designs, patterns of action, character types, themes, and images which are identifiable in a wide variety of works of literature, as well as in myths, dreams, and even social rituals. And on the other hand, according to the Oxford Dictionary, archetype is a very typical example of a certain person or thing. It is an original which has been imitated, or a prototype. Or it is also a recurrent symbol or motif in literature, art, or methodology. So in Jungian theory, archetype is a primitive mental image inherited from the earliest human ancestors and supposed to be present in the collective unconscious. So Northrop Frye, working in the field of literature, defined an archetype as a symbol, usually an image, which recurs often enough in literature to be recognizable as an element of one's literary experience as a whole. So what is the purpose of Frye's theory? So Frye uses the archetypes to connect literature in a broader context, like backing away from a painting to admire the entire composition rather than the brushwork. So they should also be used to note how literature is traced from the archetypes in order to analyze how literature remains unique while still having some connection to the structure of the archetypes. So the central idea is that to apply one or more of these spaces or their lenses to the stories that we read, and also to allow ourselves to interpret and understand stories based on existing archetypes and theories about the story. So to understand this more, let's now talk about the concept of the archetypal criticism. So now let's talk about the archetypal criticism. So the archetypal literary criticism is a type of critical theory that interprets a text by focusing on archetypes, or the symbols, images, and character types in a literary work. So by recognizing conscious and unconscious symbols, we can see why we relate emotions, values, feelings to specific images. So archetypal criticism argues that archetypes determine the form and function of literary works, that a text's meaning is shaped by cultural and psychological myth. Archetype images and story patterns encourage readers to examine basic beliefs, fears, and anxieties. So basically, the concept of archetypal criticism is that we all know that literature can be interpreted in as many ways as possible. And there are different approaches to literature, and one among them is the archetypal approach. So as I have said, the term archetype means an original idea or pattern of something of which others are copies. So archetypal approach is the interpretation of a text in the light of cultural patterns involved in it. And these cultural patterns are based on the myths and rituals of a race or nation or social group. So the myths and rituals are explored in the text for discovery of meaning and message. So furthermore, archetypal criticism is a synthesis of structural criticism and historical criticism. So according to Frye, the focus of the critic should be on the work and not on the writer. Frye is of the opinion that an author cannot intrude into his text and express his personal emotions and comments. So he should maintain absolute objectivity. Because the writer is only a human medium, so the critic should not divert from the work and focus on the other. Sometimes there may be peculiar symbols that the writer used unconsciously. However, criticism should not be just the biography of the writer. So now let's talk about the mythos of grade. So in the Archetypes of Literature, Frye tries to provide a skeleton of literature. That there is a possibility that archetype that he suggests open up the new investigation of any literary work. So by observing that every story has the beginning, the middle, and the end, Frye suggests that the law of nature works uniformly, and with the law of nature, literature can also have a certain pattern where the ideas, characters, concepts, environment works symbolically with nature. So here, Frye suggests the mythos grid. So basically, Northrop Frye asserts that all narratives fall into one of four mythos. Each mythos has 6 spaces, sharing 3 with the preceding mythos and 3 with the succeeding mythos. So as we can observe, the comedy is aligned with spring because the genre of comedy is characterized by the birth of the hero, revival, and resurrection. Also, spring symbolizes the defeat of winter and darkness. Romance and summer are paired together because summer is the culmination of life in the seasonal calendar, and the romance genre culminates with some sort of triumph. So, we can also see in this grid that satire is metonymized with winter on the grounds that satire is dark genre. So, satire is a disillusionized and mocking form of the 3 other genres. So it is noted for its darkness, dissolution, the return of chaos, and the defeat of the heroic figure. So the context of a genre determines how a symbol or image is to be interpreted. So Frye outlines 5 different spheres in his schema: the human, animal, the vegetation, and the mineral and water. So as what I have said earlier, Frye has divided the essay, which is the archetype of literature, into 3 parts, wherein the first part deals with the concept of archetypal criticism that I already discussed earlier. So now I'll be discussing the second part that throws light on the inductive method of analysis of a text, and the third part that focuses on the deductive methods of analysis. So now I'll be discussing the inductive method first. So towards the close of the first section, Frye contends that structural criticism will help a reader in understanding a text, and in his analysis, he proceeds inductively. That is, from particular truths in a work, he draws forth general truth. Owing to jealousy, Othello, in the Shakespearean play, that inflicts upon himself affliction, and this is the particular truth of the drama from which the reader learns the general truth of life, that jealousy is always destructive. So this is called the inductive method of analysis under structural criticism, and Frye discusses this in detail in this section of the essay. An author cannot intrude into his text and express his personal emotion and comments. So, as I have said earlier, I have also discussed this, that the writer should maintain absolute objectivity. So, a critic studies works and find out whether an author is free from textual interference. So, this is a sort of psychological approach also, This method of criticism helps the reader in understanding an author's personal symbols, images, and myths which he incorporates in his work. So at times, the author himself may be unconscious of the myths, symbols, or others which he has exploited in his work, and the critic discovers such thing. So now let's talk about deductive methods of analysis. So an archetypal critic under the deductive method of analysis proceeds to establish the meaning of a work from the general truth to the particular truth. So literature is like music and painting. Rhythm is an essential characteristic of music, and in painting, pattern is the shape of virtue. So rhythm in music is temporal, and pattern in painting is spatial. So when we compare it to literature, both rhythm and pattern are recurrence of images, forms, and words. So in literature, rhythm means the narrative, and the narrative presents all the events and episodes as a sequence and has sense actions. So pattern on the other hand, in literature, signifies its verbal structure and conveys a meaning. So in producing the intended artistic effect, a work of literature should have both the rhythm or the narrative and pattern or the meaning. So in conclusion of the different approaches of literary criticism, Northrop Frye has established the validity of the archetypal approach and its relevance in the elucidation of a text. So like works of literature, criticism is also creative, and an archetypal critic discovers the meaning of a text and the motives of a character. So no human endeavor is independent, and the work of an archetypal critic is inclusive of formalistic criticism or structural criticism and historical criticism. So in mythical criticism, both the inductive method and the deductive method are effective tools, and neither can be dispensed with according to Frye. If one method explains a text based on the derivation of a general truth from the particular, the other method does it the other way around. So both the methods are complementary, and if either of them is unexploited, archetypal criticism will be incomplete. So an archetypal approach to a text has contributed to the establishment of a systematic and comprehensive concept of literary criticism. So that would be all. Thank you very much for listening.